Welcome, my achievement hunters and collectible gatherers. This is episode 2 of the Complete Critique series, where I pick apart some of your favorite games to see where they excel, or maybe even where they fail. Today I will be critiquing the sometimes stealth, sometimes action, but always chaotic world of Dishonored. And before we get started, this is an analysis and not just a general review, so there will be plenty of spoilers ahead. You have been warned. We will be critiquing 8 categories for our Royal Protector today, these being storyline, gameplay, characters, enemies, locations, aesthetic, sound, and content. Well, without further ado, let's completely critique Dishonored. For me, one major allure of Dishonored is its story of false charges, revenge, betrayal, and finally redemption. Or ruination, depending on how you play. This is the tale of the one and only Royal Protector turned assassin Corvo Atano. It is divided into 10 chapters, or missions as they are called in-game, and enveloping these chapters are 2 distinct narrative arcs, the Lord Regent arc and the Loyalist arc. Now what separates the 2 arcs is the conflict that provokes Corvo. Alright, recap time. The game opens up in the city of Dunwall, where there is a rat plague known formally as the Doom of Pandysia that is wreaking havoc. Chapter 1 begins as Corvo returns to the Empress, Jessamine Kaldwin, from his journey to find a cure for the plague. It is here that we also meet the next heir to the throne, Emily Kaldwin. And things quickly take a dire turn for the worse as the Empress is assassinated right in front of Corvo, who is soon after framed for her murder by the royal spymaster Hiram Burrows. This leads directly to Chapter 2, which centers around the escape from Coldridge Prison, where Corvo had been sentenced to execution. After receiving some outside help, Corvo breaks out and is rescued by a boatman named Samuel Beechworth. The two make their way to the Houndpits pub, home base of the Loyalist conspiracy. This small group plans on overthrowing Hiram Burrows, who has now taken the position of Lord Regent. The Loyalist party is initially led by Admiral Farley Havelock and Lord Trevor Pendleton, but also later joined by Overseer Teague Martin. Anyways, now that Corvo is free, his first orders are to infiltrate the office of High Overseer Thaddeus Campbell. Campbell is an ally of Burrows and a corrupt leader of their military force. And over the course of this mission, Corvo rescues Martin and takes care of Campbell. 2 birds with 1 stone. After that, the following 3 chapters are also pretty simple. Chapter 4 has you take out Lord Pendleton's older twin brothers, Custis and Morgan Pendleton, who reside in a brothel called the Golden Cat. The twins had controlled parliament votes for Burrows and are now holding Emily captive, though we rescue her during this mission. Following after, Chapter 5 deviates from the standard operation, where instead of taking out the target, we are capturing them. Corvo is sent to abduct the royal physician Anton Sokolov. The Loyalists want answers from Sokolov, specifically the name of the Lord Regent's mistress, his most powerful ally. And speaking of this mistress, Chapter 6 takes place right after Sokolov has been contained and has told us her name, Lady Boyle. But there seems to be an issue for Corvo. That is, namely, that there are 3 Lady Boyles, so it is up to him to decipher which one is the true target. To do this, Corvo attends the Boyle Estate's costume party to narrow down which Boyle is the target. And once she is dealt with, it is time to pay the Lord Regent one final visit. Chapter 7 covers the infiltration of Dunwall Tower, the very location where Corvo had previously served the Empress. Here, Corvo can decide to either kill Burrows or have him arrested after broadcasting his confession for the public. But regardless of Corvo's choice, he returns to the Houndpits pub for a very much earned celebration. It seems like all is well. Emily is safe, the Lord Regent is no longer, and peace is right around the corner. Sadly for our protagonist, however, peace was far from the plans brewing in the minds of those around him. The Loyalists had grown to fear Corvo's efficiency and skills along with their own actions and newfound power. And this results in the greatest betrayal Dishonored has to offer as Havelock, Pendleton, and Martin poison Corvo at the party. And this plan would have been a success had Samuel not already lessened the dose before giving it to Corvo. Samuel then puts our unconscious self onto a boat and sends us down to the flooded district of Dunwall. And with that, the Loyalist arc begins, containing chapters 8 through 10. And as you can tell by now, this arc is characterized by Corvo's second betrayal, but this time it was by his own allies. Chapter 8 begins with Corvo being imprisoned once more, but this time by the master assassin Dodd, the very man who had killed the Empress with his own two hands at the beginning of the game. This is not a man to be reckoned with. Furthermore, Corvo had been stripped of all of his weapons and gadgets when he was imprisoned. So yes, we must set out to go reclaim them. And only after doing so is Corvo able to break into the assassin's hideout and confront Dodd, ultimately deciding the fate of the Empress's true killer. Once that is done and dusted, our royal protector finds a way through the flooded sewers to get back to the Hound Pit's pub. Chapter 9 revolves around taking back your home base and learning the whereabouts of your previous allies and Emily. The Loyalists' inventor Piero and Sokolov are bunkered down in the workshop, so Corvo has to rescue them. Corvo then uses a signal up in the tower to contact Samuel, who arrives to ferry Corvo one final time. The climactic finale, or Chapter 10, takes place on King Sparrow Island, the final destination for Corvo and the location of the Loyalists' traders. And fun fact, the final chapter plays out slightly differently depending on your chaos level. On low chaos, the island is sunny with Havelock, Pendleton, and Martin all being in the towering lighthouse. It is also revealed at the end of the level that Havelock poisoned the other two and is the only one remaining. Alternatively, on high chaos, the island is caught in a storm with raging water as far as the eye can see. Additionally, Pendleton and Martin are fighting in the main fort this time, with only Havelock actually being located in the lighthouse. Regardless of what chaos level Corvo is on, the primary objective is the same: deal with Havelock and rescue Emily. Once those two goals are accomplished, the actual game is over. All that's left is to watch the epilogue detailing what happens afterwards. Low chaos results in a golden age being brought about, with Emily as the Empress and Corvo rightfully as her protector. Corvo would be remembered as a kind, noble influence on Emily, as reflected in this ending. But if you played on high chaos, it results in a far less forgiving future of terror and ruthlessness. And to really drive this point home, some key characters are even killed in the epilogue, such as Samuel. And with that, the quick little recap is over. So, as a whole, what did I think of Dishonored's storyline? Well, to be completely honest, I thought it was decent as a sum of its parts. I mean, it has an effective hook of being stripped of your status and seeking vengeance on those who wronged you. But, and that's a big but, the story in general was kind of meh at times. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the ride the whole way through. It's just that with the episodic nature of the missions, it felt a little too broken up. And God, most of the targets I had absolutely no ties to other than they are in cahoots with the Lord Regent. However, after the major turning point, or the Loyalist betrayal, I really got invested in the plot. It has an intriguing mission right after as you meet the Empress's killer himself, Dodd, and seeing the sorry state of the Hound Pit's pub in the next mission was also good fun. And, of course, I would be remiss not to talk about the final mission, the cherry on the top of Dishonored's narrative, in my opinion. Something about the whole confrontation with the Loyalist leaders at the end I thought was quite well done, even if it was a little simple. I don't know, for me it was just the whole idea of weaker individuals suddenly being granted power that was far beyond what they could handle that I thought was kind of interesting. Well, final thoughts? Dishonored has a solid narrative that is standard and accomplishes what it wants to do, but it was segmented a little too much between missions and it relies on the unexpected twist to keep the player interested. Keeping that in mind, I give Dishonored a storyline rating of 7 out of 10. Not too bad. And now to talk about the more interesting half of the game, the gameplay. The physical weapons are your essentials for an assassin. You have your sword, crossbow, and pistol along with different ammo types. But those are whatever. The compelling addition to Corvo's kit was his supernatural abilities. By obtaining runes scattered across Dunwall, Corvo has access to strange powers from slowing down time and x-ray vision to straight up summoning a horde of rats from the ground. And if that doesn't sound like peak entertainment, well, I don't know what to tell you. And God, when I tell you these are so fun, like not even joking in the slightest, there is nothing in this game more satisfying than slowing down time, possessing an enemy, and making them walk right in front of their own bullet. And flame me if you want, but my favorite two abilities actually ended up being Blink 2 and Agility 2. Simply due to the sheer amount of map control these abilities give you throughout this, which, believe it or not, tend to come in handy when you're trying to kill targets as an assassin. I know, it's crazy. There was also something exhilarating about teleporting insane lengths across the rooftops just to get a drop on some unsuspecting victim below. Hell, I even loved the seemingly less favorable abilities such as Shadow Kill. Shadow Kill disintegrates anyone who you kill. I laughed far too much from how often I would witness an accidental death result in someone's body just straight up evaporating from the face of the planet. And do you remember me mentioning Chaos Level earlier when discussing the storyline? Yeah, the Chaos system in Dishonored is its primary draw for gameplay. Everything in the game revolves around your Chaos level, including enemy count and strength, the rat and weeper populations in Dunwall, and obviously plot elements as well. Plainly put, Chaos is based on the amount of people Corvo kills and evil actions he takes, aka doing evil stuff equals a higher Chaos level. I enjoyed the Chaos system to bits since it made multiple playthroughs feel fresh each time. And I am not an expert on level design, but god did Low Chaos show me how intricately designed the missions were. There are a crazy amount of hidden areas and passages that Corvo can use to sneak around the map or find loot. Alternatively, High Chaos granted me an endless amount of foes to test out the game's rich weapon sandbox on. Each side of the Chaos level spectrum allowed me, the player, to experience two completely separate, yet equally complex systems built into one game. But to be completely honest, that might have also been the gameplay's only major downside. Depending on which playstyle you choose, stealth versus action, you'll probably see very little of the other half. For example, if I'm wanting to play low chaos, I am not going to kill often and therefore I won't utilize a lot of the unique lethal weapons. And if I'm playing high chaos, I won't bother finding my way around the problems when I could just force my way through. And hey, maybe others were able to find a compromise between high and low chaos, but I just found the two levels far too contradictory to work in a single playthrough together. And then there was the actual gameplay loop of the missions, which was also done quite well. Being able to choose special methods of dealing with your target's Hitman style was my cup of tea for sure. I mean, I could kill Morgan Pendleton with Steam, or I could choose to send him to work laboriously in his own mines. However, some of the alternatives were morally questionable at best. Rather than choosing to kill Lady Boyle, the good option is delivering her unconscious body to this over-obsessive man who claims to be in love with her. Yeah, that was not the virtuous kind of choices I thought I would be making at all. Overall, the gameplay of Dishonored was novel, and it was bundles of joy messing around with the numerous weapons and abilities the game had to offer. And even someone like me who doesn't typically prefer stealth-oriented games found sneaking around Dunwall to be just as stimulating. Though due to the nature of the Chaos system, I often found myself being restricted to a certain weapon or playstyle rather than the whole kit. But that did not really bog down the gameplay at all, so Dishonored gets an overall gameplay rating of 9 out of 10. Characters had a similar issue to the story where they were all adequate, but not much more than that. They weren't boring or uninteresting, in fact they were quite the contrary, though if you were to ask me about them, I could sum up 90% of the cast in maybe 1 or 2 sentences each. For instance, Havelock starts off as a well-meaning man who is met with an abundance of power turning him corrupt. Pendleton is envious of his older brothers, which plays into his arrogant and selfish attitude. Martin is more composed than the other 2 loyalist leaders and seemingly the more clever individual as well. And I think that covers the personalities of the primary characters you'll interact with quite well, unfortunately. There aren't many complexities in the cast background or actions, it feels like. Even Corvo and Emily, the main characters of the game, get little to no personal exploration in the first Dishonored. I mean, Corvo gets his revenge twice by the end of the game, but did he say a single word the whole time? No! And Emily is the classic naive princess who has to learn about the cruel nature of the country she'll soon rule over. Then there are the antagonists. You basically have no interactions with these several targets before you actually deal with them. I mean, okay, there are some very brief interactions with the Lord Regent, Overseer Campbell, and Dodd, though nothing substantial. And you know the cast is flat when my favorites ended up being a man who ferries you between missions, an awkward inventor who is a peeping Tom, and a crazy Russian scientist. No disrespect towards these guys though, since their conversations with Corvo had me constantly grinning. If anything, Dishonored's world building had much more focus, as the environment is rich with tiny bits of lore everywhere. It's kind of odd to explain, but I suppose to formulate it into words, Dishonored's cast felt like whatever personality they were dealt at the start, they would have at the end. None of them really changed, grew, or even had a chance to be more than the character they began as. Essentially, for any characters you either love or hate at the beginning of the game, your feelings will likely not change a modicum by the end of the story. There is one man, however, who dared to challenge this rule, and his name is Samuel Beechworth. He is an exceptional character. This modest sailor carries Corvo to and from each mission, and this means a lot of one-on-one conversations. There's just something comforting about his presence, since he kinda seems like the true voice of reason at times, yet is never in the limelight. Samuel can be introspective, caring, and dependable in Corvo's times of need, though also distant, harsh, and even disappointed in Corvo when he does bad. The middleman, the moral compass, the supportive ally, and most importantly, a friend in a world that has few.
But somehow you managed to get through all this mess without losing sight of what really matters. For that, I respect you. The city's gonna pull itself up, I believe. Too many good people here to let it all turn to ashes. I'd best be going. The battlefield's no place for an old sailor like me. That time is long past. Good luck, my friend.
The majority of the cast in Dishonored were simple yet entertaining. Their personalities matched the setting of Dunwall, giving plenty of personality to the rundown city, though they rarely deviated from their characterized norms and felt the same from beginning to end. Overall, I think the cast of Dishonored deserves an okay character rating of 7 out of 10, even if only for Samuel. The enemies in the game were as plain, if not more so, than even the characters. A good portion of the enemies you'll be facing are just your classic thugs, soldiers, infected civilians, and even rats. And I get it, in the setting of Dishonored, these choices for adversaries make complete sense. I wasn't expecting to duke it out with a dragon or anything. It is simply that you should not go into the game expecting to fight a diverse or exciting roster of enemies. Overall, I'd have to say that the most interesting foes to face were probably the tall boys and assassins. Tall boys lack any non-lethal options, meaning you have to either kill them or avoid them. And assassins are unique since they also have supernatural abilities such as teleportation and the Force. Then there were the various targets throughout the game. Most of the missions were built around exploration, plans of attack, or figuring out how to corner your foes. But once it was time for Corvo to actually confront the targets, it was just a matter of deciding what method of execution you'd want to bestow upon them. I believe only Dodd has an actual unique boss fight. Everyone else though? Nah, they were just cannon fodder. And even then, Dishonored's huge weapon pool made most battles trivial anyways, so did it really matter? No. This is even more evident on Higher Chaos, since they send almost double-digit amounts of enemies at you just to give them a fighting chance. Though I can see this playing into the unkillable man theme that is prominent in High Chaos, so it's absolutely fine. If anything, enemies were more satisfying to kill than they were strategic. They were definitely gratifying to wipe the floor with, but I hardly felt threatened. Furthermore, their designs, purposes, and functions were also subpar since they are mostly your standard foes with only a couple exceptions. In the end, I'm willing to give Dishonored's opponent lineup a less than favorable enemy rating of 4 out of 10. Dunwall, being the capital city and primary setting of Dishonored, is home to various locations for a royal protector to parkour through. Unfortunately though, I did not feel particularly strong about all the locales look-wise, but they were sure fun to explore. Whether Corvo finds himself in a prison, sewer, brothel, ballroom, sewer, tower, lighthouse, sewer... Why are there so many sewers? Seriously, there has to be other kinds of underground structures, right? Tunnels, bunkers, caves, mines, anything, but nah. They thought that the sewers were so exciting the first 2 times that they went for a third. And that's not counting the DLC at all. Of course, I'm only kidding. While visiting the sewers is definitely commonplace in the game, I feel that most of the other locations are unique. Landmarks such as Campbell's office, Boyle's estate, or even Dunwall Tower have so many secret rooms and passageways to discover. And more so than just improve the enjoyability of stealth, it adds depth and even a little mystery to Dunwall's locations. To give an idea, during Mission 4 there is a brief visit to Caldwin Bridge where Corvo is asked to disable the searchlights there. But choosing to climb to the very top of this bridge not only awards an achievement, but also this spectacular view. Love to see it. Even the less notable buildings hold plenty of secrets and really helps Dunwall feel lived in and filled out. And it doesn't even matter if the maps aren't giant because they're just so dense with loot, scraps of lore, Easter eggs, and whatever else. But due to the setting being a single city, a good deal of the areas look kinda samey tone-wise, which can bog down the experience. I mean, take the Flooded District for example. This mission is long and has quite a few pacing issues. This made traversing the gloomy and bleak district kinda tiring as it drags on. And it wasn't a terrible mission by any means, but especially on repeat playthroughs, this shows how the rundown city can get old on occasion. So to sum it up, the locales are filled to the brim with mechanical surprises and a wonderful atmosphere. However, I gradually grew tired of this very atmosphere on longer levels or even repeated playthroughs. Though if this is your first time playing Dishonored, or you just love its atmosphere that much, then this probably shouldn't be an issue for you. And even with that slight complaint, I still think the good definitely outweighs the bad, so I'm gonna give Dishonored a location rating of 8 out of 10. I'm just gonna come out and say it, that I love Dishonored's art style. And I know there are many who think the characters look off-putting or even flat out ugly, which I totally agree with. But at the same time, that's a core component of its narrative. Dunwall is a prime example of a corrupt and tainted city, so the characters looking like this builds upon that idea. And this is especially true among the males in the game. Yeah, sorry ladies, all of the female character models look completely normal. I know, sucks doesn't it? Dishonored's men have disproportionate and almost caricaturistic faces or bodies. Let's look at this selection of characters real quick. Notice that the soldier-esque characters have big hands and broad shoulders, but also smaller heads. I like to think this signifies the brawn over brains concept that many of them exemplify. The same can be said on the flip side. Those born of important positions or nobility in general have slimmer and taller figures, with more emphasis on their facial features. I mean, just look at those 5 heads, that just screams status and self-importance. And then there are some outliers like Sokolov, who have extremely exaggerated faces. But in his case, it might represent his madness in a visual way, I don't know. And then when looking at Dishonored's locations I mentioned earlier, most of them you'll see are gloomy, dark, grimy, and worn down. I mean, I guess there is an ongoing plague in Dunwall, so it's only fair for the city to be in a depressing state. And that just makes contrasting locations such as Lady Boyle's costume party all the more effective. But then you leave the party, and what's it look like outside? Yeah, not so happy now, is it? Dunwall is going through its darkest period, so of course the aesthetic wants to express that. And you want to know the best part about this art direction? It is timeless. Similar to games like Metroid Prime, Borderlands, Super Mario Galaxy, or even Wind Waker, the art style holds up incredibly well regardless of how much time passes. The world of Dishonored will continue to look just as you remembered it from the moment you first laid your eyes upon it. And that is truly remarkable. I want to give Dishonored's crude yet stylized art direction a perfect aesthetic rating of 10 out of 10. Dishonored lacks a massive soundtrack, but man does it make up for it with some truly atmospheric composition. Though, as fitting as the themes are to the story and world, they are not really bangers per se. Many of them mix an eerie string or piano arrangement along with a powerful percussion backing it up. They provide a good sense of navigating a rundown city, getting your hands a little dirty, and just trying to survive each and every experience. Additionally, there is one piece that stood out to me far beyond the rest. Sure, I love the 2 street themes, and of course, Honor for All is an outstanding credits theme, but none of these reached the same emotional impact of Wrenhaven River for me. And funny enough, this piece accompanies Best Boy Samuel during each of his brief boat rides between missions. It invokes the paranoia, discontent, and even sorrow that encapsulates Dunwall. As Samuel puts it,
Half the city's dead of the plague. The other half's fighting over what's left.
and just as the music is reaching its lowest point, the vocals gradually take the place of the strings when signs of hope seemingly flow into the song. The music then gains a sort of vigor and strength that it had previously been devoid of, even if it is just a tiny bit. For me, Wrenhaven River just felt like the true, theme song of Dishonored. This game has an immersive soundtrack, and the majority of songs fit the tone of the game. Though a good amount of them were not too remarkable, so I don't know if any will really be joining my playlist anytime soon. Though within the sense of the game, I think it is fair to give Dishonored a sound rating of 7 out of 10. Dishonored also has quite a healthy helping of content for those eager to explore its world in depth. And if you couldn't tell already, plainly put, this game is exceptional when it comes to replayability. As I had discussed earlier, the Chaos system adds a lot of fun and visually noticeable changes between high and low Chaos. Furthermore, the multiple methods of play, your stealth or your action gameplay, also kept the game interesting. Dishonored is all about options, options, options. A single problem could have 10 whole solutions just waiting for you to experiment with. I mean, I suppose you could just walk in and stab each of your targets, but where's the fun in that? Let's just use the first target the game offers you as an example. High Overseer Campbell. I mean, this one man alone has so many choices you can make. Campbell can be confronted personally, killed by his own poisoned drink, led to and assassinated in his own secret chamber, or even branded if you decide to choose the non-lethal route, and this is ignoring all the variations in weapons or techniques that one could opt for. My point is that Dishonored thrives when it comes to replayability since you have so many options at any given moment. There are also plenty of optional side objectives for our intrepid assassin. Some of them lead to the aforementioned non-lethal methods, some just give extra loot such as runes, and others are just fun side stories that enrich Dunwall's lore. Though a majority of these are simple and do not take a lot of effort or extra time to complete. And honestly, there's really only one memorable side quest chain in the game. This, of course, is the dispute between a witch named Granny Rags and a gang leader named Slackjaw. Near the beginning of the game, namely the second mission, you aid Granny Rags in tainting a distillery, but unknowns to you, this distillery is actually home to the Bottle Street gang. Fast forward to next mission and you meet Slackjaw, who is the leader of the said gang, and he forces you to work for him. And to make up for this major fumble, he has you run a couple errands for him. And then he even deals with a target for you if you so desire. Though after this, the quest chain does go quiet for a bit. That is until after your betrayal and introduction to the Flooded District, where you find the two in a argument. Though argument is an understatement. Granny Rags wants to actually cook the poor man in soup, and as expected, Slackjaw wants no part in that. It is then up to you to decide which one you want to work with. And of course, if you don't choose Slackjaw, you're a monster. This last quest was just so oddly charming, comedic, and kinda came out of left field for me, but hey, at least it was memorable. Oh, and of course, who can forget the challenge markers of Dishonored? Every mission ends with a results screen, but on that results screen are actually two tallies. One is for pacifism and the other is for ghost. And these two bonus challenges give a mostly already unthreatening game just the right amount of boosted difficulty. Unfortunately though, it can be clearly seen that these focus entirely on stealth rather than it does on fighting. So these end up feeling more like puzzles you have to solve than a test of combat skill. Do I go around these enemies? Do I knock out this guard and risk being caught? Should I go out of my way to hide this body, or just leave it? These are some of the more common thoughts I had each mission. It was all about planning and searching for the best possible routes that would either be uncrowded or just avoid any enemies altogether. Overall, Ghost itself was just an amazing challenge that I recommend to any Dishonored player who wants that little extra something to spice their game up. And I wouldn't be able to call myself the 100% hunter without bringing up the most meaningful activity life has to offer. Achievement hunting. I know, that sentence resonated deep with each and every single one of you. Dishonored's base game has a total of 50 achievements for you to obtain. There are many achievements for story progression, game completion, challenge runs, types of kills, collectibles, and a lot of random silly ones. And if you're in it to win it for full completion, well, the good news for you is that the achievements in Dishonored's base game are moderately accessible to your slightly above average player. I mean, I had a little trouble with challenge runs such as Mostly Flesh and Steel or the previously mentioned Ghost achievement, but overall there are not that many difficult or annoying achievements for me. And it must be stressed greatly that this is strictly talking about the base game because, God, anyone who has the DLCs know they are the tough part. But that deserves its own video someday, and only because of the Dunwall City trials alone. But enough about that, let's move on to the final scoring for now. First things first, Dishonored has wonderful replayability, with each run feeling fresh due to the numerous amounts of choices and routes to take. Dishonored has a balanced amount of side content. There isn't too much to where it's overwhelming, nor is it bare bones with little to do. Additionally, the achievements in the base game didn't kill my enjoyment a single bit, and that is a feat in itself. I am proud to give Dishonored a perfect content rating of 10 out of 10. Oof. And with that, all categories have been successfully critiqued. Well, here's the complete rating of Dishonored's categories. And as I always like to say, each rating does not necessarily reflect the game's literal quality since everyone has different tastes. Depending on what aspects you value, this could make or break the game after all. Regardless, I think Dishonored is definitely worth checking out if you're into stealth or action games, as this one has both. But with that, another game has been completely critiqued. If you enjoy this series, consider subscribing, commenting, and all the other fun algorithm stuffs. It would be 100% appreciated by yours truly. And also, what's that? He escaped. Dear God. I gotta go get myself to a safe room pronto. This has been 100% Hunter, and as always, I hope you follow your instincts and continue the hunt. Until next time, friends!